The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, a gentle symphony of rustling leaves, bird song, and the distant murmur of the river winding its way through the valley. It was a place untouched by time, where life thrived in perfect harmony. But today, something was about to disturb that peace. A mother bear and her cub lumbered through the dense undergrowth, their thick fur glistening under the golden afternoon sun. The cub, no more than a few months old, was full of boundless energy, pouncing on fallen leaves and swiping playfully at the buzzing insects that flitted past. Its mother, ever watchful, kept a close eye on her little one as they neared the river's edge. The water was calm on the surface, reflecting the towering pines like a perfect mirror. But beneath that serene exterior, the current ran swift and deep, a hidden danger that few could see until it was too late. The cub, driven by its endless curiosity, padded closer, its tiny paws pressing into the soft mud. It had never seen water like this before, so wide, so glistening, so alive. A dragonfly danced above the surface, its iridescent wings catching the light, and the cub couldn't resist. It lunged, its small body teetering on the edge of the bank. Then disaster struck. The ground, softened by the river's constant erosion, crumbled beneath the cub's weight. In an instant, the tiny bear was gone, swallowed by the cold embrace of the rushing water. A desperate cry tore through the forest. The mother bear roared, her massive form rearing onto her hind legs. Her eyes widened in panic as she watched her cub thrash helplessly, its tiny limbs flailing against a relentless current. But the river was merciless, pulling the baby bear farther away with each passing second. The cub let out a shrill, terrified wail. It was too young to swim, too small to fight against the invisible hands dragging it downstream. It bobbed up once, twice, before slipping under. The mother bear charged into the water, but she stopped short, hesitating. Instinct screamed at her to dive in, but the river was deep, and even for a bear of her size, the current could be deadly. She roared again, pacing along the shoreline, watching helplessly as her cub disappeared beneath the surface. The forest fell silent, but not far away, someone was listening. A lone German shepherd, his coat streaked with dirt and twigs, lifted his head at the sound of the bear's anguished cries. His ears perked, his sharp eyes scanning the trees. This wasn't just an ordinary animal call. This was a cry for help. Rex had learned to survive in the wild. Once he had belonged to a human, but fate had left him alone, forced to rely on his instincts to stay alive. He had seen many things in these woods. Predators hunting prey, storms ripping to the land, but never had he heard a sound like this. Something was wrong. The dog sprinted to the undergrowth, his paws silent on the mossy earth. As he reached the riverbank, he took in the scene instantly. The panicked mother bear, the roaring water, and just beneath the surface, a tiny, struggling shape. Without thinking, Rex lunged. The water hit him like ice, stealing the breath from his lungs. The current wrapped around him like unseen hands, dragging him downward. But Rex was strong, built for endurance, and he fought against the tide, his legs kicking furiously. Ahead, the cub bobbed weakly, its eyes wide with terror. Rex pushed forward, his powerful strokes cutting through the water. He was close now, just a few feet away. The cub was sinking again, its small body growing limp. No, not yet. With one final surge, Rex reached the baby bear, his jaws snapping gently around the cub's scruff. He turned, battling against the current, every muscle burning as he fought to bring them both back to shore. The mother bear was waiting, her massive frame tense, her golden eyes locked onto Rex. Would she see him as a savior or a threat? The dog had risked everything to save the cub. But would the mother bear understand? The forest held its breath. Rex had done what instinct demanded. He had plunged into the river, braving the powerful current to reach the drowning cub. But as he dragged the small, shivering bear toward the riverbank, his mind screamed a new warning. The mother bear stood just ahead, her massive frame silhouetted against the afternoon light. Her golden brown fur bristled with tension, and her sharp claws dug into the earth as she watched the dog approach. Her breathing was heavy, nostrils flaring as she took in the scent of the creature that had touched her baby. Rex didn't need to speak the language of bears to understand what was happening. She was torn, conflicted between gratitude and fear. Her cub had been helpless, swallowed by the merciless river. And yet, it was not her who had saved it. It was a stranger, a predator, a dog. A low, guttural growl rumbled in the bear's throat. Rex hesitated, his heart hammering. He had done what was right, but now he faced an entirely new danger. A mother bear, even in the best of circumstances, was an unpredictable force. He knew that one wrong move could be his last. But then the cub whimpered. Weak, trembling, and soaked to the bone, the tiny bear coughed up water, its small body heaving for air. Its dark eyes blinked unfocused at first, before finally recognizing the figure standing above it. Its mother. A new sound filled the air, a deep rumbling chuff. The mother bear lowered her head, nudging the cub with her broad snout. It stirred beneath her touch, mewling softly. Relief flickered in her expression, but her focus quickly shifted back to the dog. Rex remained still, his muscles coiled, ready to bolt if needed. Would she see him as an enemy? For a long moment, the world seemed frozen in time. The only sounds were the gentle trickling of the river and the distant chirping of birds in the trees. Then, the mother bear did something Rex did not expect. She stepped back. It was only a few inches, but it was enough. She was not attacking. She was not snarling. She was not chasing him away. She was watching. Rex's ears perked. He lowered his head slightly, showing he meant no harm. His legs trembled from exhaustion, but he forced himself to remain strong. His sharp eyes stayed locked on the mother bear, reading every movement. The cub, still weak, pressed against its mother's leg. It wasn't afraid of Rex. If anything, it seemed to understand that he had saved it. Rex took a cautious step back. The mother bear huffed, a warning, but not a threat. That was enough for Rex. He turned and padded away, his soaked fur clinging to his body. The river had stolen much of his strength, and every step felt heavier than the last. But he knew better than to linger. He had done his part. The cub was safe. But as he moved toward the safety of the trees, something made him pause. He glanced back. The mother bear was still watching him, her large eyes filled with something strange. Not anger, not fear. Something else. Recognition. A deep part of Rex, the part of him that had once belonged to a human, understood what was happening. He had seen this look before, in the eyes of those who had once cared for him. Gratitude. And then, without another sound, the mother bear turned, her cub at her side, and together they disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Rex stood there for a moment longer, feeling the weight of what had just happened. A bear and a dog, enemies by nature, but for one brief moment, something more. A silent understanding had passed between them. A bond formed not by words, but by actions. And deep down, Rex knew this would not be the last time their paths would cross. Astrus, the mother bear, had spared Rex today. But had he truly earned her trust? And what would happen the next time they met? The forest had returned to its usual rhythm. The wind whispered to the towering pines. Birds flitted between the branches. And the river carried on as if nothing had happened. But for Rex, nothing felt the same. His legs trembled as he trudged away from the water's edge. The rescue had drained him, his lungs still burning from the struggle against the current. His coat, slick with river water, clung to his skin, making every step feel heavier. Yet, despite the exhaustion, his mind raced. The mother bear had spared him. Rex knew all too well how the wild worked. A mother bear was one of the most dangerous creatures in the forest, a force of nature that few dared to challenge. And yet, she had let him go. More than that, she had looked at him, not with the rage of a protective predator, but with something else. Something he couldn't quite place. Gratitude? It didn't matter. He was alive. The cub was alive. That was all that mattered. But as Rex climbed a rocky incline leading away from the river, a sound made him freeze. A cry. His ears perked, his body stiffening as he listened. It wasn't a roar of the mother bear, nor was it the distant calls of the birds. It was something softer, weaker, something struggling. The cub. Rex's pulse quickened. He turned back toward the river. The mother bear had left with her baby just moments ago, but something was wrong. The cub's cry was faint, but it carried a note of distress. Rex hesitated. He had already risked his life once today. He had done his part. The mother bear had her cub back. Was it really a problem anymore? And yet, something inside him wouldn't let him walk away. With a deep breath, he turned and sprinted back toward the river. His paws pounded against the damp earth, his muscles protesting, but he ignored the pain. As he neared the water's edge, he saw them. The mother bear stood a few yards away, her massive body hunched over her cub. The little one lay on its side, still soaked from the river, its tiny body trembling. Rex slowed his approach, cautious. He wasn't sure how the mother would react to him now. He had saved her cub once, but that didn't mean he was welcome. The bear lifted her head. Her deep-set eyes locked onto Rex, and for a brief moment neither of them moved. Then something unexpected happened. She stepped aside. It was subtle, but the message was clear. She was allowing him to come closer. Rex swallowed his hesitation and took a step forward, then another. As he neared the cub, he could see the problem. It wasn't just exhaustion. The little bear was struggling to breathe, its chest rising and falling unevenly. It had swallowed too much water. Rex had seen this before. He had once lived with humans, had once watched them care for others in need. He didn't have hands, but he knew what needed to be done. Carefully, he nudged the cub's small body with his nose, urging it upright. The cub let out a weak whimper, but didn't resist. With a few gentle pushes, Rex helped position the cub onto its belly, allowing gravity to do its work. A second later, the cub coughed. A spurt of water dribbled from its tiny mouth. Another cough followed, then another. The cub's trembling eased slightly, its breathing growing steadier. The mother bear let out a deep chuff, her massive body relaxing ever so slightly. Rex stepped back, his job done. The cub, still weak but recovering, blinked up at him. There was no fear in its eyes, no hesitation, only trust. Rex felt something stir inside him. For years, he had been alone, abandoned, a lone survivor in the wild. But in this moment, standing beside the mother bear and her cub, something shifted. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged. Rex had saved the cub twice now, but would this fragile bond with the mother bear last, or would nature's instincts eventually tear them apart? The air was thick with something unspoken. A fragile understanding hung between Rex and the mother bear, an invisible thread woven from shared struggle and survival. He had saved her cub not once, but twice. Yet still, he was an outsider, a lone wanderer in a world that rarely showed mercy. The cub, now breathing steadily, let out a soft whimper and pressed itself against its mother's thick fur. Its tiny body still trembled, but there was life in its eyes once more. The mother bear let out a low chuff, her massive head lowering to sniff her baby reassuringly. Then she turned her gaze back to Rex. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, predator and predator, wild and tamed. Rex didn't move. He knew she could end him in a heartbeat if she wanted to, but she didn't. Instead, she did something he never could have expected. She stepped away, not toward him, not in warning, but simply away. A gesture of neutrality, of acceptance. Rex's ears twitched. Was this an invitation, or merely permission to leave in peace? The answer came from the cub. With a soft grunt, the small bear took an unsteady step forward, toward Rex. Its tiny nose twitched as it sniffed at him, curiosity outweighing any lingering fear. For a brief second, Rex tensed, unsure how the mother bear would react. But she simply watched. The cub let out a tiny, playful huff, its round ears twitching. Then, in a move so bold it surprised even Rex, the baby bear nudged him with its snout. Just a soft boop against his shoulder, a child's silent thank you. Rex stood frozen. The warmth of that tiny gesture hit him harder than any storm or battle he'd ever fought in these woods. His tail twitched once, the only outward sign of the emotion stirring inside him. A bond had formed, not just with the cub, but with its mother as well. They had shared a moment of survival, of mutual trust. And in the unforgiving wilderness, trust was more valuable than anything. The mother bear let out a low grunt, a sound that seemed more like acknowledgement than warning. Then, without another word, She turned and began moving to the trees, her cub following at her side. Rex watched them go, his instincts screaming at him to let them disappear, to return to his solitary life as he always had. But something stopped him. A pull. He didn't belong to humans anymore. He hadn't belonged to anything in a long time. But now, here in the heart of the wild, among creatures he had once seen as enemies, something had changed. Slowly, cautiously, he took a step forward. The mother bear didn't stop, didn't turn to chase him away. She only kept moving. Rex followed. At first, he stayed several paces behind, keeping his distance, unsure if he was truly welcome. But the cub, still brimming with youthful curiosity, would occasionally glance back at him, as if making sure he was still there. By the time night fell, Rex was still trailing them. The mother bear finally came to a stop in a clearing beneath an ancient oak. The cub plopped down beside her, exhausted from the day's events. The mother lowered herself next to her baby, her giant form curling protectively around it. Rex lingered at the edge of the clearing, unsure. Then, the mother bear did something he never expected. She let out a slow, deep chuff, a sound not of warning, but of acknowledgement. She knew he was still there, and she didn't send him away. Rex lowered himself onto his haunches. He wouldn't intrude, wouldn't press his luck. But for the first time in a long time, he had something he had thought was lost forever, a place where he wasn't alone. The wild had brought them together. But could this fragile trust survive the true dangers of the forest? Night draped the forest in a veil of quiet. The towering trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering ancient secrets. The moon cast pale beams through the branches, illuminating the unlikely trio resting beneath the old oak. Rex, the mother bear, and her cub. Rex lay a few feet away, his ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound. Despite the strange sense of belonging that had begun to settle in his chest, he knew better than to let his guard down. He was no fool. Trust in the wild was fragile, and even the smallest mistake could mean death. The cub, however, had no such worries. After hours of cautious glances, the little bear had all but decided that Rex was safe. It had shuffled closer to him, its small body rising and falling in steady breaths as sleep overtook it. The mother bear had watched but made no move to stop it. She had acknowledged Rex, but was she ready to fully accept him? Rex wasn't sure. Still he stayed. The night deepened, and somewhere in the distance a wolf howled. Rex's ears perked immediately. His muscles tensed. It wasn't just any wolf. He knew that call. His past came flooding back. The days when he'd been part of a pack, running with others like him, surviving together. But that life had ended long ago. He had been cast out, left to fend for himself. He had learned that loyalty in the wild was often fleeting. Another howl cut through the silence, this time closer. The mother bear lifted her head, her dark eyes scanning the trees. A low growl rumbled in her throat, a warning not to be ignored. Rex stood. His instinct screamed that danger was near. And then movement. A shadow shifted between the trees, followed by another, then another. The wolves had arrived. 5 pairs of glowing eyes. Rex's hackles rose. He knew these wolves. They were not a simple hunting party. They were scouts. Their job was to find weakness, to test the waters before the real attack began. And right now, they saw weakness in the mother bear and her cub. A mother bear alone was dangerous, but she had expended her energy protecting her child. She was not at full strength. The wolves could sense it. Rex turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting the mother bear's for the first time since the wolves had appeared. A silent understanding passed between them. They were outnumbered, but together, maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. The first wolf stepped forward, teeth bared, eyes locked on the cub. Rex growled, not at the bear, not at the cub, at the wolves. The message was clear. You will not touch them. The mother bear let out a deafening roar, standing to her full height. The wolves hesitated, momentarily unsure. But they were not easily intimidated. They had their orders. They would not leave without testing their prey. The lead wolf lunged. Fangs flashed in the moonlight. Claws raked against the dirt. The battle for survival had begun. Outnumbered and exhausted, can Rex and the mother bear fight off the pack, or will the wilderness claim them? The forest exploded into chaos. The first wolf lunged, aiming straight for the cub. Its sleek gray body cut through the darkness like a dagger, teeth glinting under the moonlight. Rex moved on instinct. With a powerful leap, he intercepted the attack, crashing into the wolf midair. They tumbled across the dirt in a blur of snapping jaws and raking claws. Pain flared along Rex's shoulder as the wolf's teeth grazed his flesh, but he didn't let go. He clamped down on the wolf's scruff and threw it aside, sending it skidding across the forest floor. The mother bear roared, shaking the trees. She reared on her hind legs, her massive frame towering over the encroaching wolves. Her cub whimpered, pressing itself against her thick fur. Another wolf charged from the side, hoping to catch her off guard, but she was ready. With a powerful swipe, her claws met the attacker's face, sending it yelping backward. Blood splattered the ground. The wolves hesitated for the first time. Rex's breath came in ragged pants. The scent of blood filled the air, mixing with the damp earth. The pack was testing them, probing for weakness. But now they knew this wasn't going to be an easy kill. Still, the battle wasn't over. A third wolf darted toward the cub, its movement swift and calculated. The mother bear turned, but she was too slow. Rex wasn't. With a burst of energy, he launched himself between the cub and the attacker, colliding with the wolf in a blur of fur and teeth. They tumbled into the underbrush, snapping and snarling. Rex felt the sharp sting of claws against his side, but he didn't let go. He bit down hard on the wolf's leg, forcing a yell from its throat. Then, suddenly, another shape loomed behind him, the fourth wolf. Rex barely had time to react before sharp teeth sank into the scruff of his neck, yanking him backward. A pained yelp escaped his throat as he hit the ground. The lead wolf, the largest of them all, stepped forward, growling low and deep. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a warning. Back down or die. Rex struggled to his feet, his legs trembling. He was exhausted, his body battered and bloodied. He could see the mother bear breathing heavily, her strength waning. The cub trembled behind her. They were outnumbered. Then something changed. The mother bear stepped forward, not in retreat, not in fear. In rage, with a guttural roar, she lunged, not at the wolves closest to her, but at the alpha. The lead wolf barely had time to react before she was on him. Her claws raked down his side, sending him crashing into the dirt. A deep, agonized yelp echoed through the forest. The pack froze. For the first time, the hunters became the hunted. Rex saw his chance, summoning the last of his strength. He turned on the wolf, still pinning him down, twisting his body and sinking his teeth into its leg. The wolf howled and recoiled, scrambling backward. The others hesitated. Their leader was down. Their prey had fought back harder than they had expected, and in the wild, a miscalculated hunt could mean death. The pack made their choice. With low growls and retreating glances, the wolves slowly backed away, fading into the darkness of the trees. It was over. Rex let out a shaky breath, his legs barely able to hold him up. The mother bear lowered herself, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The cub, still trembling, waddled forward, first towards mother, then toward Rex. With a soft whimper, it nudged his injured shoulder. A silent thank you. Rex let out a tired huff, a ghost of a smile in his eyes. He had been alone for so long. A stray, a survivor. But now, here in the heart of the wild, he had found something unexpected, a place where he belonged. The battle was won, but would the bond between a bear and a dog be strong enough to survive the wild's next challenge?